where do you see the execution usually break down, and how do you address that?
Much of it evolves around communication. And generally, either no communication or poor communication or not frequent enough communication. You almost can't communicate too much. And it also involves, with a lot of managers, they want to do all the talking and none of the listening. And one of the techniques that we developed that was tremendously successful for us, again, around understanding people, is during our diligence process, we did what we call start, stop, keep. So we would set up appointments with key employees, generally around 15 minutes per meeting, with no other employees or managers there. And we would just simply ask them, all right, what would you like to see the company continue to do? What would you like to see the company start doing? And by the time you got to the third room, which is actually a negative response, what would you like to see the company stop doing? You actually already knew those. And it's amazing how many tremendously productive and insightful ideas come from employees, many of whom have been there for long periods of time, but aren't high-level people. They could be a bookkeeper or a controller or a salesperson. Didn't really matter much the title. A lot of them had very good ideas if we were willing to listen. And oftentimes it was the first time anybody ever asked them anything and then listened to what they had to say. And then they were really gratified when we would actually take their ideas and implement them in the company. And, they felt like they were really heard. So it's far better to listen than to talk. But if you're in a lead role, if you do not communicate effectively, rumor mills fill a vacuum very rapidly.
I love that framework of start, stop, keep. That might be a lesson that operators can apply even to their business today and have that as something they can ask their employees, even outside of a context of improve their business as well.
Absolutely. I'll share a little case study in this regard, which is a really solid proof of concept. Before I moved into investment banking, I was recruited on a management contract to do a very, very complex turnaround, both organizationally and from a technology standpoint, of a $60 million 501c. And when I first took on the assignment, I made some immediate assumptions about what was going to have to change, where I saw inefficiencies or areas that could be exploited for growth, just based on my historical experience level. But thankfully, I went through the start, stop, keep process. And believe it or not, there were 220 employees in the company, and I met with every one of those employees individually. And I pretty quickly learned that my initial assumptions were not only wrong, but if I had executed on the changes I thought I was going to make when I first stepped into the organization, it probably would have blown the company up, because what I thought was a waste, the employee population, as part of their corporate culture, looked at those as essential parts of their business. So I made a complete pivot. We made a lot of changes based on the input I got. But the other interesting thing was the area of the company that I thought was most dysfunctional. That actually wasn't the area of the company that was most dysfunctional. It was in a telemarketing sales organization. And we had to go through some radical changes at that part of the business, which I would not have figured out for quite some time after I took the job running that company. But several of the employees I met with, ironically, one guy from the IT department was the first one that kind of caused the light bulbs to go on for me in that regard. So you never know where that valuable information can come from.
That's a really important insight and great story you shared there. Now, if you are coming into an organization and there may appear to be a lot of things that need to be changed, such as strategy, the brand, systems, and maybe even people, where do you even start, and what strategies do you employ to help someone navigate all those changes?
Well, again, in a situation where I was placed to do a turnaround, especially once the light bulb came on for me relative to the inaccuracy of some of my early observations and assumptions, I wanted to make sure I took time to really get to know the business better, and particularly the key managers. And over time, I was able to make far more accurate assessments and take the actions necessary. I had a very wise board of directors that I reported to who knew that we have a very concerning situation in this business, and they gave me carte blanche to make the changes that we needed to make. And those changes quite often were very difficult. I actually had to change out, I think it was 8 of the 9 top managers in the company in order to begin to create a far more collaborative, communicative, open corporate culture. And there was a lot of spending waste and inefficient analysis of financial information. And we ultimately carved $6 million costs out of a $50, $60 million company. And those were difficult things to do, but it's not, there's that, what's that old expression, ready, shoot, aim. You can't do that. We have to really kind of dig deep in the weeds and understand the business before we can make any of those fairly radical decisions that really had to be made for that company to survive.